Hello everyone and welcome back to some more Battletech Alpha Strike for the channel, the third showing of it, but this one is special because it's going to be included in the viewer verdict video series that I'm starting, or have started by the time you hear this. So that means, if you aren't aware, there is a short video at the start of that playlist if you want to get really caught up. But essentially it just means after you've watched this video, take to the comments and cast your vote whether you are for or against Alpha Strike being a regular occurrence on the channel, whether you think it's a good mix, whether you just don't like the game or like it. You can just write for or against. You can go into as much or as little detail as you would like, but that will help influence what appears on the channel and how often it appears on the channel. As I say, go watch the little 2-minute video if you want full details. But other than that, it's just going to be a standard Alpha Strike video like we have been doing. That's just the only little twist. And well, I guess the other twist is that today the entirety of the Alpha Strike box set is being used. So it is Clan versus Inner Sphere, exactly what you get in the box, other than the scenery, which this is third party scenery, but everything else is just from that box. So on that note, let's take a look. So here is the Clan star that you get in the Alpha Strike box. There's 5 mechs in a Clan star. In general, they're stronger than Inner Sphere mechs, and they're more skilled as pilots, so that's why there's less of them. So it's 5 versus 8 today, because it's 2 full Inner Sphere lances against these 5 in the Clan star. Back left, as you see it, is the Warhawk slash Masakari, depending on whether or not you want to use the Inner Sphere or Clan names. Next to it, we have the ubiquitous Mad Cat slash Timberwolf, which I think everybody knows, even if you aren't familiar with Battletech, because it's just iconic. And then front left, we've got the Nova T. Then we have the Firemoth G, who is even weaker in terms of survivability than a Locust. It has 1 armor, 1 structure, but it's much stronger. So if it can get into the rear arc, and it moves 30 inches as well, if it can get into someone's rear arc, it has at least 1 good turn of blasting someone before it gets shot off the table. And then finally next to that, we have the... Actually, you know what? I did that in the wrong order. That's the Nova T. That's the Pouncer T. Sorry, I'm more familiar with Inner Sphere mechs. So, Clan mechs are a new thing to me, but yeah. That's the Nova T. That's the Pouncer T. Very similar names. All of them, by default, would be skill level 3, which is pretty decent, especially since the box standard skill level for Inner Sphere pilots is 4. However, there is still a bit of an imbalance in point value between the two sides in the box. Not sure why that is, but in order to balance it out a bit more, the Timberwolf and the Warhawk are going to be skill level 2, so they're going to find it pretty easy to land shots starting from that skill level of 2 instead of 3 or 4 or 5. So that's just to balance out the points. With them at that skill level and the entire Inner Sphere lances at skill level 4, it brings them both to within 10 points of each other, roughly 280 I believe. So that makes it the most fair that you can do with the contents of the box. And over here we have the other half of the Alpha Strike box set. We've seen them already last time, the full 2 lances of Northwind Highlanders. However, I did actually forget to mention, when quickly going over the clan there, I forgot to say what clan they are. They're Clan Jade Falcon. It's unfortunate that the star box comes with, if you're painting them like the colours that come in the box and the little novella that's in the box, it's 2 different shades of green. But hopefully the bases will help them stand out if nothing else. So just to quickly go over these again, we've got the heavier mechs in the lance on the left and the lighter stuff on the right. We've got an Atlas, oh actually let's read the specific names in case people care. An Atlas S4, we have next to him a Warhammer 8R, and then in the front there we have a Wraith TR5, and then an Archer, which is a Archer 7C. Then, and the other lance, a Blackjack 5, we have next to him a Phoenix Hawk 4M, we have a Wasp 5A, and a Locust 7V. So as I say, they're all going to be skill 4, so their chances to hit on average is lower. They've obviously got a numbers advantage, and that also plays into the scenario that we're playing, which is also from the quick start rules in the Alpha Strike box set. So again, we're just using stuff from that. But first, a quick word from our sponsors, who do stock some Battletech stuff if you're interested. And if you check it out via the affiliate link listed in the description box below, I will be compensated. This video is sponsored by Noble Knight Games. Check out the video description below for an affiliate link that will take you through to their store, and it will help me out as well. Thanks. So thank you for listening to that, and just to quickly go over from the core, or from the quick start rules rather, we're going to be playing Breakthrough. Although, as a little side note, I found these poly wallets on Amazon. Each one has space for 2 Alpha Strike cards, and it's laminated perfectly. Reusable, obviously, because you can just take the cards out, and then you can just use dry erase marker to mark off armor and structure and overheat, etc. as it happens, instead of using dice, which is what I've been doing, which I'm aware is a bit archaic. A lot easier to use a marker. Anyway, Breakthrough from the quick start rules. If a player's mech is in base-to-base contact with their opponent's home edge during the end phase of a turn, remove the mech from the game and score its size in victory points. If a player scored 10 victory points by an end phase of any turn, the scenario ends and that player wins the scenario. If playing Inner Sphere versus Clan, which we are, each clan mech is worth 1.5 points per size towards the victory. Obviously, because there's less of them, that's just to compensate a little bit. Both sides have very fast mechs that could very quickly, because we're playing on a 3x3 table, cover the 36 inches to get across in 2 turns, or the Fire Moth, if it sprints, can actually do it in 1. But the downside is, yes, it will get taken off the field nice and quick and score some points. They're small, so they're not worth many points, and then they're not left on the board to help kill the nasty stuff. So it's a bit interesting. There's a couple of different ways you could play this. Anyway, we'll get both sides set up and then be back for one more quick look over the battlefield, and then we'll get started. So both sides are set up. The Clan Jade Falcon are set up to your left and Northwind Highlanders to your right. I'm going to do a quick flyover, but then we'll go back to static cam after that. Except when we're covering the end of the movement phase, and we'll just be doing all the movement off camera and then coming back and showing you where everybody ends up. It's just easier that way for the editing process, but because we're in a 3x3 table, which obviously will mean this mission is easier than it perhaps should be, they're right against the edge, so there's almost as much distance between them as there would be if you were playing on a standard size table. And because there's 8 of them, the Northwind Highlander are basically just in a big line here, with the Phoenix Hawk and the Wraith down the bottom, slightly separated from the rest. The Atlas and the Warhammer are right in the middle of the street. They're just going to strut their stuff down the centre table and try and fight anyone who opposes them. Although the clan mechs, some of them have higher attacks in certain brackets than we have coloured dice available. That's how strong they can be. So they can definitely be scary. But anyway, we're going to jump into first turn and see who can get across the board. And we'll come back at the end of the movement phase. So turn 1's movement phase is complete. Clan Jade Falcon won initiative, so the Northwind Highlanders had to act first, eventually having to go 2 times for every 1 for the clan just because of the 5 versus 8 mechs. Both sides chose violence, though nobody sprinted. Everybody is capable of firing, although I don't think some of them have line of sight on anything. We went for like a much more dense, or at least denser than the previous battle reports. Battlefield today, so sightlines might be a bit harder. But let's quickly look at where the Northwind Highlanders ended up, although there's the Fire Moth right there, where it's 30 inches. He did not flee off the table. He is potentially going to try and get somebody in the back next turn. But the Wraith jumped up onto this building here, the Phoenix Hawk jumped up onto the building here, the Warhammer and the Atlas, they're just strutting down the street, and they're going to try and take on the clan that gets in their way. The Blackjack hopped over with his jump jets onto the building there, the Archer moved behind the large building that the Wasp jumped onto, and the Locust did a ground move to get between those 2 buildings there. I don't think anyone can see him there. Let's see, I'm going to get them mixed up again, whether or not it's the Pounder or the Pouncer. So we're going to come over here so I can cheat sheet it. Let's see, that is the Nova, so I was wrong on both counts. Nova jumped up onto the building there. The Warhawk is down here doing a ground move next to the Mad Cat, and then the Pouncer is over here, and you saw the Fire Moth up there. So that is it. Both sides very capable of doing some shooting. The clan mechs in general better at it though, and they can do more damage in certain range brackets. But we'll go into the combat phase now and start shooting. Well, the Northwind Highlanders shooting got started with the Wasp on the large hospital building there, taking some shots at the Nova Cat, but even getting a 7 is not good enough. Base skill of 4, jumped for 2, medium range for 2 more. TMM of the Nova Cat is a 2 plus 1 because he jumped. Basically he needed 11s and 12s, so it is a big fat whiff on his 1 shot he had. The Blackjack up on the building back there shot down the field at the Warhawk that will try and get camera on. There he is right there. Needing 9s at least, I think. Base skill of 4, 2 more for medium range. My dog is desperately trying to get past the tripod. There we go, she worked it out. She worked out she could go between the rungs, didn't have to go around them. The Blackjack jumped itself, so that's an extra 2 and 1 for the move that the Warhawk did. So very, very abysmal roll there. Not getting higher than a 7 does not put them off to a good start. Well, some paint got scratched off next as the Phoenix Hawk, who jumped up onto the building here. Base skill of 4, he jumped for an extra 2, shooting at medium range, plus a TMM of 2 on the Mad Cat that he shot at, meant that of his 3 weapons he could fire at medium range, he actually did get through with 1 of them by rolling a 10, which was exactly what he needed. So the Mad Cat / Timberwolf has taken 1 armor damage of his, I think he has 8, so he's barely feeling it. And trying to join in the fun, the Wraith on the building next to the Phoenix Hawk tried to do the exact same thing, firing medium range into the Timberwolf / Mad Cat again, and doing nothing. He also needed a 10 for the exact same reasons as the Phoenix Hawk, and closest he got was a 9, so didn't hit with a single thing. So next up for the Northwind Highlanders was our Archer, who's completely obscured behind that building, but he has a special rule called IF3, which is Indirect Fire 3. It's an attack you can do instead of doing one of your normal attacks. It indicates the number of shots you can get if someone else acts as the spotter to see someone that you don't have line of sight to. Now, it was a little unclear based on the quick rolls whether a mech needs to use up a turn to be a spotter, so couldn't see anything about it. Going by the video game logic, you just have to have a friendly that has line of sight, so that's the way we're playing it. It might make a difference in the long run, so it's annoying that we didn't have a definitive answer, but do let us know. It matters because he did only get 1 hit through for 1 damage, but it was a crit, and the crit roll was an MP hit, which is movement points, so the Mad Cat took 1 more pip of armor, and now moves at half speed. With the Locust unable to get line of sight on anybody, it came down to just the Warhammer and the Atlas. The Warhammer shot first, the target being the Mad Cat once again. It's almost like they want to kill it or something. But needing 9s overall, I believe. 4, 5 for moving, 6, 7 for range, 8, 9 for TMM, yeah. So 9s needed and didn't manage a single hit, which is pretty disastrous. But they still have the Atlas to fall back on, although his view of the Mad Cat would be obscured, making it 1 harder. Same if he went after the Warhawk, so his targeting not the best, but it's not like he has anything better to go after, and he didn't sprint, so he might as well shoot at something. And there's the dice rolls after the Atlas shot at the Mad Cat with that extra +1 to the number because of him being slightly obscured by the rock on the right here. Needing 10s overall, that meant, which means only 1 hit got through to plink off another point of armor. He was so close to doing at least 2 more points because he got 2 9s, but didn't quite manage it. So the Mad Cat had 4 mechs, 5 mechs shooting at him and walked away with just 3 points of armor gone, leaving him with 5. And now it is time for the clan to retaliate. Well, we're starting off with a perfect example of the clan getting to roll more dice in general. The Nova up here decided to shoot across onto the other building to try and take out that Wasp because the Wasp is pretty weak. And in his short and medium range brackets he has 6 weapons, so he had to roll all the dice that we have available to try and hit. Now, granted, his base skill of 3, but he did jump to make it to a 5, medium range is a 7, and the Wasp is an additional 3 + 1 because of his base TMM of 3 plus the 1 for him jumping as well. So none of the dice he rolled, despite rolling quite a lot of them, hit. It's the 40k Orc experience, but in Battletech form, I guess. So the mighty Warhawk brought its weapons to bear with the results shown there. He also chose to overheat, which just means at the end phase he adds a point of heat, and then in the next turn it makes him 1 harder to land shots, I believe it is. But as long as he doesn't overheat again, it'll burn off at the end of the second turn. He did that to put in 1 point of damage. Now, for the purposes of rolling variable damage, as in rolling multiple sets of dice, or 2d6, for each weapon they're firing in a range bracket, was unsure based on how the rules are worded in the quick start rules as to whether or not overheating adds +1 to the damage done by every successful hit, or just +1 damage overall for each level of heat you've chosen to do. We're going to do the latter this time. If that's wrong, again, it's a bit unclear in the quick start rules, so by all means let us know. But that's how we're doing it this time. And he was shooting at the Phoenix Hawk up on the building there. His skill is 2, remember, him and the Mad Cat have skill 2. He ground moves, so no penalty there. All that it really was a TMM +1 for the Phoenix Hawk having jumped onto the building. So I think he was needing 7s? Yeah, I think it was 7s. But he actually only hit with 2, plus the extra 1 from overheating his weapons. So 3 damage done to the Phoenix Hawk's 5 or 6 armor. And then the Mad Cat activated. Now he needs to fire more dice than we have available. He, in the short and medium range brackets, has 7 weapons. So only the successes have been left on the table just to show how much damage done. He was also shooting up on the building though at the Phoenix Hawk, which we're going to need to move to the right a bit more to see. There we go, he is up there. So 3 hits got through, including hitting into his structure. So a crit was rolled, it was a 5 though, so that just means no critical hit. If he'd overheated, and the Mad Cat can overheat up to twice in one shooting, he actually would have just outright killed it, but it doesn't really matter because the Phoenix Hawk only has 2 structure and he's lost 1 of it, so he is now into forced withdrawal. He will no longer be trying to get across the table. His next action will be to flee that way, and based on his movement, he doesn't need to sprint, so he might not make it to the edge, but he is going to try and get off the table because his battle is over. And that's actually going to do it for turn 1 clan shooting phase, because the Fire Moth can't see anybody, he's right up against the building, he wants to try and flank next turn. And come over here, the Pouncer, Pouncer every time, clan mech names just... Anyway, he, because of this raised building here, he can't really see the Wraith, and he can't see the Phoenix Hawk from that angle, just based on how far back on the building they are. It's just the angle doesn't work. Like, this is obscuring, so is this. I guess technically you could say maybe it would just be -2, but he really can't see any of it because of how like stumpy he is. So that's just going to take us to the end of the first turn. So at the end of the combat phase of the first turn, this is again as per usual where you apply all the damage done, because both sides are really fighting simultaneously. That's why it's an advantageous thing to go second, so you know whether or not you might as well just overheat up to the 9s, because if you're dead anyway. What do both sides have to show for it? Well, the clan have suffered a little bit of damage on their Mad Cat, 3 armor I believe it was, plus a movement point reduction, so they're going to be limping across the table, but it hasn't affected their ability to put out a ridiculous amount of damage. The overheating effects apply now as well though, so the Warhawk did overheat by 1, so he has 1 point of overheat, which will affect his ability to land hits next turn, although when he's starting from a base skill of 2, it doesn't really make that much of a difference. For the Northwind Highlanders, their Phoenix Hawk, has just explained, is in full retreat. He has literally 1 health left. There's no advantageous thing to have, like from killing him, other than denying him the ability to shoot in another turn. In another turn he'd be off the table anyway, so he might as well be ignored because he's running. He's not going to the edge of the table. The objective does still remain to get to each other's table edges, of course, but if you can kill some mechs as you go, then you're going to have the points advantage at the end of the day. But at the end of this turn, both sides obviously still have 0 points. So at the top of the second turn, it is once again the Clan Jade Falcon that has won the initiative roll, so the Northwind Highlanders will be starting first in the movement phase before alternating, and then shooting all their weapons in the combat phase. So with that, we'll just go straight in and come right back after all the movement is done for both sides, and we'll see where they ended up. And that is all the movement done for the second turn. The Phoenix Hawk had to jump because it was on a building, and its jump put it to the edge of a table. So it is off immediately, is our understanding. When you're in forced retreat, it doesn't happen at the end phase, unlike when objectives score, etc. So it's mostly going to be a big brawl between the heaviest mechs on the table, the assault mechs and omni mechs, in the middle here, with the Atlas and the Warhammer still just strutting down the street, but the Warhawk and the Mad Cat are coming to meet them. The Pouncer has snuck round the side here, oops, right there. The Blackjack jumped off the table, or off the building rather, here, put his back against the building there to face where the Fire Moth ended up, because for the purposes of scoring objectives in this mission we're playing, they don't come off the table until the end phase, so if they die prior to that, they obviously won't count. The Locust did a similar thing around this end of the table. Reaching the edge, he'll get a chance to fire because he didn't sprint. But if he lives, and he's gonna, because I'm pretty sure none of the clan mates can even see him because he's in their rear arcs, he's gonna get taken off the table. He's only worth 1 point, but it's still a point. The Wraith actually jumped from where he was to here. He's facing that way though, so he's gonna get a rear shot on one of them. And the Wasp and the Nova basically swap positions on the building there. So that's where everyone ended up. The Northwind Highlanders are once again going first in the shooting phase, so we'll see what they can do. And to get the combat phase started, the Blackjack turned its weapons to bear on the Fire Moth at the edge of the table there to try and kill it. Now the base TMM of the Firemoth is actually 4. It's ridiculously high. That's why it's got such little health. It's very, very hard to hit. Adding everything together, it actually becomes more than 12. Was unsure whether or not it's allowed to be more than 12 and just makes the shot impossible, or if boxcars always counts as success. It doesn't matter because it didn't roll boxcars, but that's the way we're going to play it for this one if the issue comes up again. Well, next up the Archer, you can just see at the top of your screen there between two buildings. He's just sneaking up the side there. Can't remember if I showed where he ended up in the movement phase, but either way, in the combat phase he made use of indirect fire again to also shoot at the Firemoth to try and kill it. Basically also needing the same, I think he needed 11 or 12s, but either way didn't roll better than a 9, so a miss. Well, right down here on the edge of the table, the little Locust can shoot through the gap in the building, or between the building and the stone there, to the side arc of the Mad Cat, and only 2 weapons, medium range, but actually managed to get a hit and plink off one more bit of armour from the Mad Cat, who has 4 left now. Oh, that Timberwolf is in great danger. The Wraith, who jumped onto the building over here, shot into the rear arc of the Mad Cat and got 2 out of 3 successes on his medium range attacks. I believe he was needing 10s, and obviously both those are equal to that or higher. But because he was shooting into the rear arc, he also gets +1 damage. So he did 3, leaving the Mad Cat with 1 point of armour remaining. In an effort to start hitting internals, the Wasp up in the building there took a pot shot at the Mad Cat with his 1 weapon and did not hit it. So he's just chilling up there ready to leap to the enemy defence line next turn. The Warhammer was determined to try and finish off the Mad Cat, bringing its 4 short-range weapons to bear against it and only needing 6s. Base skill of 4, TMM of the Mad Cat is a 2 for 6, because nothing's added on for either of them doing a ground move, and short range adds nothing as well. So he got 3 hits through, taking apart the rest of the armour and getting into the structural components, which means you get a free crit roll. He rolled a 7, which was an MP hit again, so his movement has been halved a second time. And he only has 2 structure left, which means he's now in forced withdrawal as well, so he might as well go full hog when he shoots. Now there is still a case for the Mad Cat getting shot at, even though it's in forced withdrawal, because it's moving so slowly, it will still get chances to fire at the enemy unless someone kills it. That said though, the Atlas didn't aim for him, he aimed for the Warhawk, bringing his 4 short range weapons to bear against it. Base skill of 4 and the TMM of the Warhawk 1, so he needed 5s. He hit with all of them, chipping off 4 armour, still leaving it though because it's got a ridiculously large amount of armour, with 5 remaining. And that is it for the Northwind Highlanders shooting, so let's see what the clan can do in retaliation. Well, first up for the clan was the Firemoth on the edge of a table there, who knows he's getting off the table successfully and scoring 1.5 points, because he's only size 1. At the end of the round, he has the overheat capability to go up 1 heat level, so he did, and he shot his 4 short range and medium range, well, either range bracket he has 4 each. Medium range, in this case, 4 weapons, into the Atlas's back, because he wanted to try and do as much damage to the Atlas as possible, who is obscured by this building here, but I assure you he is there. So 2 of the hits got through, but because he overheated, and because he's shooting into the Atlas's rear rack, he chipped off 4 armour off of that assault mech, which isn't too shabby for a light mech. This camera angle kind of works for what happened next. The Nova up here shot short range with 6 weapons into the side arc of the Blackjack down below, managing to get through with 4 of them, not getting through to his structure though. Took out 4 of his armour. I think he has 1 armour left and then 2 structure beyond that. It does put him precariously close to death though, so he's going to have to try and get across the table as fast as possible. The Pouncer to your lower right there that snuck around the side arc of the Atlas shot into it with its 3 short range weapons. I think it was just needing 5s on the dot. Got through with 3 of them, leaving it with 3 armour remaining. They're chipping through, they're almost there. Well, the Mad Cat with nothing to lose has an overheat value of 2 and 7 short range weapons, same number as medium weapons, which is more dice than we have, so you're not seeing the full load. There was 2 more re-rolled. But he hit with all of them, shooting short range into the Warhammer, base skill of 2 and then the TMM of 1. So I think he was looking for 3s, or 4s if it's a TMM of 2. Either way, he hit with literally everything for 7, but he overheated for 2, so he actually did 9 damage to the Warhammer, stripping all of its armour off, getting into its internals. Not enough to make it go into forced withdrawal, so the Warhawk's probably going to need to make that happen, but enough to get a critical, And the critical was an 11, which was an engine hit, meaning that the Warhammer is now going to generate heat every time it fires its weapons, whether it wants to or not. And the Warhawk, who was having a +1 negative applied to, or positive I guess, which makes it harder, just because the way it works, had his chance to hit because of overheating last turn, brought his short range weapons to bear against the Warhammer. All of them got through for 5 damage and took him out entirely. So the Warhammer will be exploding in a second, actually, because I think that is it for the shooting in the combat phase. Yeah, all the clan mechs went. So at the end of the second round, damage is applied, heat is applied, so 2 points of heat onto the Mad Cat. The Warhammer is fully destroyed by mostly the Mad Cat's work. They're just going whole hog on him, removing him from the table. The Fire Moth comes off the table though for the clan and scores 1.5 points because it's size 1. The Locust comes off the table for Northwind Highlanders and scores 1 point because it's also size 1. So points have been scored by both sides. Both sides have suffered losses. The Mad Cat is basically done because it's in forced withdrawal, but it can still shoot unless somebody takes it out. So we'll see as we go into turn 3. And at the top of the third turn, the Northwind Highlanders have won the roll-off this time, so the clan mechs for Jade Falcon will be going first in the movement phase, and then also doing their combat phase first as well, which might make a difference. They are still outnumbered though, so in that situation, there might still be a case where the person who won the roll-off still has to activate multiple mechs. So at the end of the movement phase for turn 3, both sides are basically going for kind of like all or nothing plays here. The Mad Cat, of course, did have to back up. It's in forced withdrawal, it will not score, trying to position itself so that it can take out the Atlas, who did eventually sprint. The Atlas just wants to get away, so it's not going to be attacking this turn. Speaking of not attacking, the Blackjack fled with a sprint action up there in between those buildings. The Warhawk has given chase, putting his back against this building to try and take out the Blackjack to stop it scoring. The Nova and the Pouncer have gotten into position. They're not going to score this turn, but next turn they can walk to the edge and score then. It puts them in a position where they can hopefully fire downwind at the Atlas or maybe the Wasp. Well, they probably can't see the Wasp, but at the very least maybe the Atlas with some cover. Over on this end of the field though, the Wraith has made it to the edge of the table right here. So has the Wasp, and so has the Archer with a sprint move. So the Archer won't be attacking either. But if they all get off the table, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So plus the Locust that's already off. That would give them 7 of the 10 they needed to win. But if the Atlas and the Blackjack go down, they can't actually win, because they don't have enough points left to get to the other side of the table. I don't know if the clan does with their 1.5 multiplier. We'll need to see. So of course the clan immediately went to the one that matters, the retreating Mad Cat, who did overheat last turn for 2. He didn't overheat this turn. He probably should have actually, but he didn't. The 2 extra heat was making it 2 harder for him to hit, although he's starting at a base of 2, that becomes 4. TMM of the Atlas is 1, so he needed 5s. Not all the dice are here because of how many he needs to roll with his 7 short range weapons. He got through with all of them, so he did 7 damage, he got boxcars, and he got into structure. The first crit roll, because presumably you do still get the second for rolling boxcars, and the one for hitting structure damage for the first time, was a 9, which is nothing. The second though was a 10, which is fire control, so it makes him TN plus 2 for the rest of his existence, so harder for him to land hits, essentially. Now that leaves him with exactly half his structure remaining. I think it's less than half before force withdrawal kicks in. So on the assumption that nobody else lands a hit on the Atlas, whether they can or if they try to and miss, he will still be able to get away if nothing changes. But if anyone does even 1 damage to him, he starts retreating. Well, it is a bit of a disaster situation for the clan, because the Nova here can't see the Atlas at all. Totally blocked, can't even see anything from where he is. The Pouncer was unsure whether or not he can see none of the base, but because the Atlas is so bulky, like part of his shoulder is poking out a little bit, it'd be a bit too hard to try and get the camera in to show you the exact angle. But the problem is this building here, more than passing where the Atlas's base ends. According to the Quick Start rulebook, if less than a third of a mech can be seen because it's blocked by cover, it is considered to be out of line of sight, which means that neither of these two have anything to fire at, and the Warhawk can't see him because it's out of line of sight of his side arc. So that means the Atlas is going to live this turn, and it also means the only person left to fire for the clan is the Warhawk, and for them to have any chance, he needs to kill that blackjack by shooting it in the back. Well, the Warhawk, who is obscured by the same building that just saved Atlas's life, he's right down here, shot into the back of the blackjack just outside of short range. So he was at medium range, but he still rolls so many dice. He only needed to do 3 damage, so even though he was shooting into the rear arc, well, actually, based on that angle, it might be considered, because some of them are a little bit oddly turned on their base, so their front arc is sometimes a little hard to work out without getting right in there. Doesn't matter, he did at least 5 damage, so whether he was hitting the rear or not makes no difference. The blackjack is out of there, and because he sprinted, he's not firing anyway, but we'll just tip him over for now to show that he has been destroyed. Well, because of how many of them sprinted, there isn't much shooting to do for the Northwind Highlanders, but their combat phase, the most important part was the Wraith here, who is leaving the table at the end of the turn. Can he, with his 3 medium range weapons shooting into the Timberwolf's back, do enough damage to kill it? He got through with 2 of the hits, although it would be 3 damage because he was shooting into the rear arc. The crit converted to a 7, which was a 3rd MP hit, meaning the 3rd time the Timberwolf's movement would be halved, which I think puts it at 1 or 1.5, rounding up to 2. But it doesn't matter though, because the damage done is enough that the Timberwolf finally went down. Granted, it took the Northwind Highlanders 3 turns of committing quite a lot of firepower to it, but they did manage to get it down. That only really leaves the Wasp, who at best can fire a single weapon at medium range. I guess he'll shoot at the Warhawk and we'll be right back. Well, you never know when 1 more damage might make all the difference to the little Wasp that's running off the table. Shot once into the Warhawk's side arc up there. Got him. Chipped off 1 more armor, leaving him with... how much do you have? 4. He has 4 left, and that takes us to the end of the round, so we'll cover who's scoring and who's dead. So at the end of a very violent 3rd turn, the Madcat is, or Timberwolf, whatever you prefer, is removed. The Blackjack, sorry for reaching over the camera there, is removed, obviously scoring nothing because there's no point scored from kills or losing anybody. But coming off the table for the clan, nobody. Coming off the table for the Northwind Highlanders supporting or representing the Inner Sphere, the Wraith, the Wasp and the Archer all come off the table for a combined size value of 6, putting them at a total of 7 with their locus off the table. But, and here's the important part, if the Atlas doesn't get off the table, they will not win. At least in turn 4. And if he dies, they can't win at all, I think. If the Warhawk, Pouncer and Nova all get off the table, that would be what? That would be 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, but plus 1.5. So that, yeah, that would be enough if those 3 get off the table. So it actually comes down to, they don't even need to go for the table edge. They just need to kill the Atlas, and then they win by default. So that's what's going to be their attempt in turn 4. So top of turn 4, and it's going to be a super quick turn one way or the other. The Northwind Highlanders lost the roll, so they've got to move first, and the Atlas just has to escape, and they're not really known for their evasiveness or speed, and they have to move first, so it doesn't matter that there's 3 clan mechs to go after him. They are not going to bother trying to get off the table, they just need to kill him, because then they can saunter off in however many turns it takes. Obviously we won't bother showing that because there's no opposition, but they just need to kill the Atlas this turn, who's got 4 structure left. Actually, we just need to do 1 damage to him, because then he would be in forced withdrawal, which wouldn't exactly be a satisfying ending, but that's what would happen. So after the movement phase, we don't even really need to move the camera around, and there isn't going to be much of a combat phase, because 3 out of the 4 surviving mechs on the table all sprinted. Obviously the Atlas did, trying to use that building there for cover. The Warhawk was able to move into position such that he is going to be able to shoot. He can see more than 1/3 of that mech, both on the corner and counting what he can see above the building as well. So he's going to get a shot off. The Pouncer and the Nova, though, they just sprinted to get into position, because if he somehow lives this turn, he obviously has to survive a turn on the edge of the table, and they'll be able to get into position to try and kill him. So it's not looking good. Most likely the Warhawk is going to kill him right now. Northwind Highlanders would have to hit first. He sprinted, so he can't, so we're just going straight to that. And that is all she wrote, but only barely. Of the 5 attacks the Warhawk did, only 2 got through. However, shooting into rear arc, and he overheated again for 2 extra damage, meaning he chipped off the remaining 4 health the Atlas had. Double check the rules for forced withdrawal. It's actually when you have half or less, it's not less than half, so he actually should have been walking away the last turn, so it wasn't as close as this made it seem by accident, although it did come down to a photo finish, and you do have to go to your home edge, not the closest edge, which would have been quite fun because he would have tried to still run. But that did take him down. he collapses forwards, inches away from, maybe just pull back a little bit, inches away, literally 2 inches actually, 2 inches away from scoring the victory. If he'd just been a little bit faster, a little bit taller, he could have been a baller. But such as it is, the clan, technically the game hasn't ended, but there's no opposition left, so the 3 supporting, or surviving rather, clan mechs can now just sprint off the table. It might take them a couple of turns, it doesn't matter, they'll get off safely. They're worth 12.5 on their own, plus the fire moth worth another 1.5, so they more than exceed the 10 required to win. So, to end with, we got to see what the clan mechs could do, their omni mechs today. They're certainly very scary, they roll a lot of dice and are capable of putting out an amazing amount of damage, especially if they're willing to just overheat their internals. So, if you only watched this because it was in the viewer verdict video series, thank you for giving it a chance. I do appreciate you giving new games, well, new games for the channel. This game's been around since the 80s, but giving those games a chance. And if you have just been following Battletech in general, feel free to take part in the viewer verdict as well. It's in both playlists. So take to the comments now that you've seen it. Are you for or against more Battletech Alpha Strike being on the channel? You can go into as much or as little detail as you'd like as to why you've picked which you picked, and that will influence what appears on the channel and how often it does appear. So thank you very much for watching. If you would like to go above and beyond to show support, please do consider becoming a channel member. You get some early access videos and some other perks as well, like little icons and you know, little things like that. And it helps out the channel, keeps it alive, and helps keep the lights on. And I greatly appreciate any and all support given. It's very nice. But anyway, enjoy the rest of your day. Happy New Year, and see you in the future for something else. Until then, ta-ta for now.